Hey guys, and welcome to Betwixt the Books. We aren't quite sure. We think this is going to lean more towards a discussion than a full review, but we're here today to talk about Dark Restraint by Katee Robert, which is the seventh book in the Dark Olympus series. Uh, as should be obvious by us talking about a book this deep in a series, there will be spoilers of the previous books in the series. So if you haven't read those, we might mention something that has to do with the plot of those. So maybe don't listen to this one, but we will do our best, and I'm pretty sure we can, to talk about this book and the things that we want to talk about without spoiling this particular book. So if you have yet to read Dark Restraint, should be fine. But if you haven't read the other ones, caution. Just be aware of that.
We've reviewed the entire rest of the series. I reviewed Neon Gods by myself, and ever since Electric Idol, which is book 2, Michaela and I have done them together. So, just click on the link up above and start at, the book that won't spoil you, wherever that is back there in the other 6 books.
It's back there. You got options. So yes, just be aware of that before going into this.
You cannot read this book without reading the other ones. This is sometimes the case in romance series. I understand that. That is not the case in this entire series.
Yes.
If you want to understand the plot, you got to start at 1 and move forward. These are very plot-based books.
Yes. I agree. Okay, in that case, let's talk about Dark Restraint. You want to give us a plot summary of what happened in this one, or what will happen in this one?
Oh dear God. Okay, so the last book ended on a cliffhanger, which was that Ariadne, who is the daughter of we thought he was the big bad, and now we've kind of realized that he's like the subordinate big bad Minos. She needed an abortion, and so she goes to the lower city for help with that. And she offers to basically tell our heroes everything that she knows in exchange for getting out of her father's house and all that kind of stuff. You don't quite know at the end of the last book exactly who the father is, but you can guess because the Minotaur, his first name is actually Asterion. And if you play Baldur's Gate 3, I'm really sorry. The rest of this review is going to get weird because you are going to picture someone who is not this guy the entire time, as I was during the reading of this book. And so basically, this one opens up with a flashback where we see how Ariadne and Asterion slept together for the first time. We will talk more about this at length, but it's got problems, as does the rest of this book. And then it's kind of like a flash forward to after all those events. She has had the abortion, so nothing happens on page for that, in case that's a problem for you, or not just not something that you want to read about. But now Ariadne has to deal with the fallout of basically having switched sides. So she's separated from her brother and Icarus, and her dad is really mad, and her dad basically tells Asterion that he wants her dead. But of course, Asterion wants her all to himself. And so he sets about proving to her that she can trust him. And whoop, boy, are those some air quotes, because we're not sure he ever does. But meanwhile, while these two are trying to figure their stuff out, there are still things going on at Olympus. And I think this book, and again, we're not going to spoil anything, but I feel like this book really reveals, you kind of thought maybe there were 2 sides and Hermes off doing her own thing. And this book really reveals that there are at least 5 sides. This is a polygon now. And there's a lot of messy stuff happening, and it's getting interesting, and we'll talk about that too.
Yeah. Overall review point, you can maybe tell from Gretchen's description of this that we were not big fans of this one in particular. I just finished it, and with talking with Gretchen, I think we're both agreed that this is about 2 stars. I might even be a little bit lower than that, 1.5 maybe.
Yeah, the longer we've talked about it, the more I'm 2 stars might be generous.
Which is again, if you've seen any of our reviews of Katie's books, really rare. Like, we usually love Katie's books. We've read so many between us. We've read so many Katee Roberts books. We're a big fan of Katee. There's a lot
I
of
literally
things.
think between us, it's all of them.
Yeah, maybe. Quite possible. I haven't I know you haven't read her like demon series, and I have not finished all of those. So like there's a
Okay,
couple of
there's
the
like
more
maybe like
recent.
two we haven't read
Yeah, there's a couple
out
more
of the like
recent,
50 she's published.
yeah, monster romance books that have not been read yet. But outside of that, yes, like almost all of them, like pretty decent chunk. There was stuff in this book that I was flabbergasted was in a Katee Roberts book. She is normally so good about giving us books that have dark themes or BDSM themes and doing it in a way that feels ethical, and feels like even if the characters are bad, they're doing morally bad things, the romance is solid. Like you understand why the characters are in a relationship. This felt like an abusive relationship, and that by the end of it, I don't trust that they're going to stay together, which makes no sense for a Katee Robert book for me. And that's really harsh. It's like so harsh. Like, this book is important to read. You have to read it for the plot of the series. Like, you can't just be like, ah, this one's bad, I'm not going to read it. But oh my God, I was disappointed and literally so confused the whole time. I did not expect this from Katee. Not a fan. Maybe it's a me thing, not for me, but for what I want from a romance book, I don't feel like this one delivered. So yeah, it's a no for me,
Yeah.
but like you can't not read it. So I don't know what to do here.
Yeah. I think there's like I mean I just echo all of that. And so I remember literally reading the first scene, which is the flashback to their first, because I mean this book is like sex in the first chapter.
Yes.
Um, and I just texted Michaela and I went, that I cannot believe that that just happened. And we're going to talk about it. But it was during the sex scene, there is something that Asterion does that is not consensual. And like causes blood to be drawn. Okay, we'll continue to talk about this more at length, but I was so flabbergasted, like you said, that this was in a Katee Roberts book because Katee Roberts is normally so careful to have consent be a really big thing. And like, so there have been other books that she's written where like the sex scenes are just maybe not my thing, right? But I've never had that feeling of like this is dangerous, this is upsetting, this is not consensual, um, to this extent. And like to be fair, like we read Apollo and Cassandra's book, and we were like, the romance is like whatever, and it moves the plot along, and it's fine. So like we've also had other ones that felt more like plot books that moved the plot along, and the romance was maybe an afterthought. We were like, oh, that was fine. This is not fine. This is not okay, just because of the way that the relationship somehow after that scene got worse. I was like, wow, okay, this is really. And again, we'll talk about more comparison to this too, but it was just like I felt so uncomfortable the entire time reading this. And again, I've read other romance books like that, unfortunately, but I have never ever seen that from a Katee Robert book. And so as excited as I am for the things that happened in the plot, I still had to read about this relationship and I was not happy. So yeah, the more we talk about it, 2 stars just feels generous.
We should say, because I asked, because I said if there wasn't, that it would be a problem. There was trigger warnings for those things at the beginning of the book, and some other stuff. So if you are a person that needs triggers, like those were supplied. I didn't personally read them because I don't usually have, like, unless there's like hard sexual assault happening on page, which I didn't think that Katee would ever do, and I don't think she ever will. I like that's not going to be a problem for me most of the time. Like the kinky stuff that's happening isn't going to be a problem for me. Um, but from a moral perspective, yeah, like the non-consensual stuff here, it wasn't consensual non-consent. It was non-consent. It was like
Yeah.
actual non-consent, and that's uncomfortable for a couple of reasons for us as readers. I know some people don't care so much, so like it might not bother you, but yeah, for us as readers, there's problems there, and it's really hard for us to buy into a relationship, especially when that's how it starts. It's really as adults who are reading about someone who, again, we've talked about this, we don't know exactly how old Ariadne is, but she feels quite young. It feels ill-advised. Like we want to protect her. Like
Yeah.
I had a very much like she needs someone to come in her life and be like, hey, I know this feels like very like big for you right now, but like it's not healthy, and here's
No.
how we can help.
Yeah.
Like you gotta let it go. I know it's hard. I know it's hard, but babe, it's not good for you. Like that's kind of how I felt about this relationship, and that's not sexy, and it's not
No.
a good romance. Like that's not romantic.
So maybe we should just kind of, since we've been kind of dancing around it, just kind of talk about that first scene because I
Yeah.
think it'll lead naturally also into the comparison that you want to do.
Yes.
Um, because so basically what happens is that the flashback is to the night of the house party during Cassandra and Apollo's book. And this is the night in which both Theseus and the Minotaur are meant to kill members of the 13 in order to take their place. So this is not a spoiler. This is from like 3 books ago.
Yeah.
Asterion does not kill his appointed person, and Theseus does. That's how he becomes Hephaestus, which was like this is books ago, right?
Yeah.
And so Asterion finds Ariadne out in the maze at the house party, and where she's like retreated because she knows people are about to die. And so he says to her, he's like, I didn't kill anyone for you, essentially. And this, and she's like, for me? I did the bare minimum. I didn't kill anyone. But this leads to them having what is positioned in the book to be like this long time coming moment, right? Where they've been dancing around each other for a while, and you know they
It
have
was
a
forbidden because she worked for her father, and she needed to be a prize that other people could win, so she needed to stay virginal so that she would
yeah.
be having value in negotiations for political reasons, I guess.
And for the record, she knows that's bunk, but like
Yeah.
that's just the whole thing.
Yeah. That's why. Yeah.
Yeah, just to be clear that's not part of the ick factor here.
No.
Um, although Asterion will say, "Now I've claimed you and you're mine," and Ariadne actually says that's not how virginity works, and that it's just kind of brushed aside. But anyway, so during that encounter, there is consent for the sex, right? But during that encounter, he bites down on her thigh and bites down hard enough to draw blood. And this will eventually cause a scar. Um, that is intense.
Yeah.
Okay. He asked for consent for that. But then he goes on to say, like, it's not like it was an accident, right? It's not like they were in the middle of it and he got, overwhelmed, like something happened and he apologized. He's like, I he's basically a claiming, a marking, a claiming. He's like, every time you look at your thigh now, like you'll know that you're mine. And like now everyone else has to see it, too. And it was a lot. It was like, and Ariadne is very clearly confused. She's like, there's pain and pleasure mingling. And she's like, she just doesn't know how to feel about it because remember also, this is the first time Ariadne has had any kind of sex. So
Sex with another partner. She
sex,
did say
yes,
that she's quite versed in pleasuring herself. But yeah, sex
yes,
with another partner.
yeah. So it's just like that's like a lot. And then when you roll into the present day, when Asterion has realized that she's run away to get an abortion, he's like, how could she not trust me after everything? And immediately I'm like, I can give you at least one reason.
Yeah.
He was just like, how does she not trust me? Like, I can take care of her. I've always taken care of her. And I'm like, dude.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we keep dancing around. And it's just like, it's very intense. for the first opener. And then when he just starts like crabbing about why doesn't she trust me? Why does she think I'm a bad person? I'm like,
Yeah. I think there was an attempt to soften it in that she scars him back. There was like an equivalent mark given to him, but there's a very he tells her to do it, I think, in that scene, or
yes.
like gives her permission to do it. So that's at least reciprocated on his part. On a later scene, he also talks about how he likes having her scars on him. He finds it sexy, and she says she finds it sexy that he's wearing her scars. Again, that's another conversation where consent was given
But
and
again,
agreed upon
she finds it sexy that
on
he is
him.
wearing her scars.
Yes.
Michaela has phrased that very specifically for a reason.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. She did not
It is,
ask for the scar that she got. There was no communication about that at all beforehand. And it's rough.
and to be clear, that is the difference. Again,
Yes.
we're not here to like kink shame. That is not the point here.
Yes.
The point is consent,
Yes.
especially if you are going to do physical pain and damage. I mean,
And
consent for everything.
and a permanent change. It's essentially a tattoo. It's a
Yeah.
permanent change on her body that she has to carry for the rest of her life, given to her by him without any knowledge or foresight that that was going to happen. Yeah.
And that is so out of character
For
for
Katee as a
Katee.
writer. Yeah.
Yeah. I literally, I kid you not, I read the first chapter and I just put my phone back down again. And I was like, I don't know if I can read the rest of this because I don't know like what's going to happen now.
Yeah.
And it will get worse.
Or at the very least, not get better.
Nah,
I don't know if it
nah.
gets worse than non-consensual marking.
I mean,
Well,
it gets creepier.
it gets creepier. Yeah. I feel like that is like a really hard boundary for me. Anyway. um, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, if you've been watching our reviews, you will know that my favorite book in the series is the second book, Electric Idol, which I have read multiple times. And you might be going, Michaela, there is a lot of things in this book that is almost the same in Electric Idol. We have our psycho fixer killer male interest. We have plus sized leading lady. We have
Who are kind of like sheltered by their family and
yes.
not really thought of to be like much of anything, but secretly they're like super smart.
Yes. Um and we had complained, if you go back to that review, or at least said that we kind of didn't feel, maybe not complained, but didn't feel like Eros in that book was actually like evil. Like people have told us that he was killing people, but we never saw any killing people on page. You definitely see the Minotaur killing people on page in this one. And I was trying to talk with Gretchen about how I think it could have been done, where we could have seen Eros being a psycho killer and it still have been redeemable. In that if there was a killing scene at the beginning of the book where we are with him and we see him do it and we see him not care about it, you get to see him be that person in the book physically from his perspective. And then he interacts with Psyche, and Psyche would say something like, it's not cool with me. Like, if you're protecting me, that's one thing, but I don't like you just going out and killing people just because. Like, that's, and then he makes that change. And then from that point on, any killing he does is only for protection of her. That's how you make that redeemable, because you're seeing, oh, a boundary was set. I'm following the boundary. I'm respecting it. She doesn't want me to do this, so I'm not going to do it. Flip to this book, where very early on, she doesn't listen to him, or he asks her to do something,
Well,
and she says
before you
no.
talk about this, I just
Yeah.
want to pivot just back again to that opening scene
Yeah.
where the reason that they have sex for the first time is because he has not killed someone.
Yes.
And that is the thing that kind of opens these floodgates where he has restrained himself.
Yes.
Dark restraint. And that's how, so again, just to repreface this in that scene before you talk about this, I think that's a really important distinction to what you're about to say.
Yes. Yeah. He knows already, and it has been disclosed that she does not like killing to happen. He's aware of that, or senseless killing at least. Like maybe again, same understandable if it's in a protection thing, like can get that. Doesn't like senseless killing, doesn't like innocents being killed. Very early on, it's like the first time that they're interacting again after she's left, and he's like, come to this place, and she goes, no. He kills a bunch of people, leaves the three outside of
Is it
her
at least,
door.
oh no, maybe it's more.
It could be more. It's at least three, but could be more.
Yeah.
Leaves them outside her door, calls her back and says, hey, open the door. I left a present for you. The present are dead bodies. In like a, I could kill you at any moment. You need to listen to me. You need to do what I'm saying. And I'm like, this is the person that you quote unquote are love, quote unquote love, but are definitely obsessed with.
And again, he got to have sex with her the first time because he didn't kill.
Yeah.
And he has already spent at least a chapter, if not more, griping about how could she not trust me? How does she not realize that we're meant to be together? Why wouldn't she come to me? Why wouldn't she trust me? I can protect her. I will take care of her, blah, 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 blah. And this, and he's like super upset because Minos, at this point, she knows that her father has told him to kill her.
Yes.
And he is super peeved that she would believe that he would kill her.
Yes.
And he continues to feel all of these things.
Yes.
After leaving dead bodies outside of her door.
In his mind, he's like, it's an example of showing her that I could kill her at any moment, and I am choosing not to, so she should realize that I'm not doing it. But her reaction to the dead bodies is a normal one, collapsing in shock and being very upset by this. Very upset. These are just random people who were doing their job who got killed for no reason. Like, it's not, that's abuse. That's not sexy. And it's
No.
not okay.
And so the thing with their relationship is that there's this extra kicker. So again, Eros and Psyche, Eros has been a killer and then he meets Psyche and everything changes, right? Okay, fine.
Or he at least has the moral boundary of I'll only do it for protection. Characters still are like, Eros is scary. And I'm like, Eros is
dude is cinnamon bun. Here's the thing. Okay. So when the Minotaur was like 13, and I think Ariadne is set up to just be a few years younger than him, if I understand that scene correctly.
Yeah.
At that point, Asterion is basically a beggar. He's doing odd jobs, trying to survive. He's a kid on the streets. And he's out on the streets one day, and Ariadne walks by with her protection detail because her father is a very, very rich man, right? And out of the goodness of her heart, she gives him an $100 bill and a pair of gloves that he will later find out belonged to her late mother. So they had huge sentimental value. And because she realized he was cold, it was like the winter, and she gave him kindness, essentially, out of the goodness of her heart. At 13, Asterion decides that she is the goddess of all time and memoriam, and he will dedicate the rest of his life to her at this moment. He is 13, yes?
Except it's not that. It's that woman is mine. That is my wife.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Because
okay,
there's a difference between I'm going to dedicate my life to doing anything that she asks of me. I will do whatever I need to, whatever she needs. I am there. And this was that woman is going to be mine. Yes. We are each other's.
I was gonna get there, but it's just like he literally decides at that moment, like, and he literally says it.
Yeah.
Like, that's my wife. Like, I'm gonna marry that woman and I'm gonna do everything in my human power to like get near her and make her mine. We belong together. Ariadne was nice to a boy on the street, and then she continued walking, right? This has not been some kind of revelatory experience for her. But so then over the next year, the Minotaur becomes one of her father's, fixers, and grows up in the household. And they do establish friendship during that time. Ariadne has very little idea or very little awareness, right? That the Minotaur's entire life's purpose is to make her his. She does not have a choice in this. Like he never at any point, his entire like purpose is to convince her that they are meant to be together. And Ariadne's entire character arc here in this book is I've never had any choice. I've always been a prisoner. I've always been, and it is hilarious how many other characters are like, Asterion is not meant to be with her, or they say something like, you can't be soft, or you're just trying to cage her again. And I'm
or
like,
they'll even say to her, he's weirdly obsessed with you. Like,
yeah. So there's like this extra level of stalker, right? Like he's not just like some dark killer dude, right?
Yeah.
Like this is obsessive stalker, and in real life, this is the setup of a true crime situation.
Yeah. She gets murdered if she doesn't end up with him. If she doesn't do what
Yeah.
he says, she gets murdered.
And also
If I
remember
can't
that
have you, no one
yeah,
can. Yeah.
Ariadne has grown up very, very sheltered. She's basically had 3 relationships in her life, right? With her father, her brother, or sorry, 4, Theseus. And we don't really know how friendly she was with Theseus. It doesn't seem like very much. And the Minotaur, right? So she wasn't really friendly with Theseus. 2 of those people are related to her.
Yeah.
And the second she gets out, the second she gets free, Asterion comes raging after her to bite more pieces of her off. Like,
yeah,
it's creepy.
Yeah. There's also the weirdness of there's an uncomfortably long amount of time where she fully believes that he's going to kill her or has the intention of killing her and still has sex with him multiple times.
I mean,
What?
not, yeah. I mean, listen, like, there's a level of this, right, where I understand that, like, these dark romances are just like a trope unto themselves. It's why I don't read a lot of mafia romances, right? Like, there's a lot of, like, Stockholm syndrome ones that are out there, too. I understand that. I understand that for some people, this is a dark fantasy. But, like, like, all of these things together are just too much.
Unhealthy, unhealthy. That all being said, at the end of the day, when you pick up a romance book, I think the goal of the romance book by the end of it is to be like, this is the couple. We ship them. They are endgame, like Gretchen says, endgame couple. Like they were meant to be. They overcame everything and they're together now and we're happy.
They
Neither
at least complement each other.
right. Or
Right?
yes, yeah.
Like, and Katee is exceptionally good at not only having couples that complement each other, but having poly relationships. Like one of the last ones was like there's 4 people and not all of them are together with every like, and it fits. It fits so well. You're just like,
Yeah.
wow, okay. Like, so even if we don't like the romance, there's some reason they fit.
Yeah.
Sorry, not to interrupt you, but
no, like that's totally like that is a thing that we expect not just from Katee, but just in general from romance books. That's what you want. That's why you're reading it, is that you want to get the comfort of like no matter what's going on, people can find solace in each other and can be together. And that's not what we got at the end of this. Like 100%, they go out into the real world as soon as she's meeting someone who is not a psychopath. Like she could have so much better. Granted, again, in the real world, she's probably getting murdered for that because he's a psychopath. But like it's not endgame. And therefore the romance is unsatisfying. And therefore the book does not do what it's supposed to do. It's not successful. And again, maybe it's just us. We don't like the dark romance thing. It's dark Restraint, it's dark Olympus. Like all of these books have had dark themes, but not to the point where I have ever felt this is harmful. And this is one of those books where I'm like, I don't want to hand this to a young girl because it's an unhealthy relationship that's being romanticized in the way that it is a romance book. And you're supposed to want them to be together at the end. I don't want them together at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, and again, that's what I mean. Like, I understand that some of these things are dark fantasies and stuff like that, but I think the great thing about Katie's books is always that no matter how dark, for romance they've gotten, there's always been those elements of consent, at least within the relationship themselves. But it's like a really model way to present a good BDSM relationship, which is not always the case in a lot of romance novels. And I think I have an expectation that Katee will be an example of how to present that to, in the best way possible. And this is not that.
No.
And that's a problem. Like, I grew up in the Twilight Age. I mean, Michaela did as well, but like, I had friends who were like, romanticizing Edward Cullen stalking Bella out her window, right? And they were like, that is so romantic, and like making their entire personalities about that. And that's harmful. So to have someone who's historically presented very good BDSM to have this happen just feels uncomfortable.
Again, the problem is not with I don't want to say the content, because there was non-consent there, but like, again, the kink itself, the biting, the claiming, the marking is not the problem. It was the lack of consent. The harder sex or the BDSM sex is not the problem. It was the lack of communication, the lack of real understanding on what they wanted with each other throughout the book. I never felt like they were on the same page.
Yeah, quite frankly, I liked Ariadne and I wanted better for her.
Yeah. And not to say that Asterion could not grow and become better, but I didn't see it in this book, and I don't trust that it's going to happen anytime soon.
No.
Or that it would be healthy for him to continue down this path in this relationship. It's not healthy. It's not a healthy relationship.
No.
I don't like it. I don't like it.
No.
Not a fan.
So we want to end this on a high note, which is talk about the things that we did like, which was basically everything that didn't have to do with this couple. Because again, we do want this to be spoiler free, and so we don't want to give any spoilers for the end of this book.
Yeah.
Right. But as I kind of said in the beginning, just in oblique terms, I feel like in this one you get a lot more senses of like some characters, and it's more characters than you think, have ulterior agendas. And so like, we've known that Minos was, like there for some reason, for some nefarious purpose. We've now realized in the last couple of books that he's working for Circe, who was a Hera for the previous very, very terrible Zeus, and that she's coming to like tear down Olympus. And so there's been like multiple things happening of like, 13 members getting murdered. And then the threat of the wall that protects Olympus coming down. But it has kind of really seemed like, okay, there's like Circe and Minos and like these people over on this side. And then there's the people of Olympus over on this side. They don't really like each other, but they're all trying to like work towards, their situation, like
protect our city.
Yeah. And then Hermes is out just kind of like, obviously has an ulterior motive and is the last book in the series for a reason. And in this book, you just realize that it's way more complicated like that than that. Like I said, there's like at least 5 different factions like moving around, and that's really exciting. The last like fifth of this book is like a lot of action-packed stuff. A lot of things start happening. And I have said this ever since the new Hera walked onto our screens because I read it on this, but walked onto the page. I was like, I need her book. I need her story. And I understand why she has been pushed to the end of the series, because obviously she's like up to her neck in things, and she always has been.
Yeah.
But in this one, you start to see a little bit more of her plan, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm so excited because I've always really, really wanted her book. And I feel like every little new detail we get, it's just like I was so right. Like her book's gonna be a banger plot wise when we finally learn all of these things that have been happening off screen or off page. So um there were great characters. Like this plot is kind of pitched off because Ariadne is contracted to marry Dionysus, who
Love Dionysus.
is
Love
truly a
every single
peach.
time he's on the page. More Dionysus.
Her never husband was more respectful to her than her future husband. He's just so nice and lovely. And there's like this little, like, you can kind of tell that like there's something going on in the background. It's something that's been kind of like broken in a big relationship for him since the house party in the Cassandra and Apollo book. And we were just like, where is his book? Where is his Abiade? Where is his story? So like hopefully maybe we'll get um like another short story like she did for Medusa with this series, because like Dionysus deserves way more than has
Yeah.
currently been given.
It's hard with Dionysus because I think he's meant to be arrow ace coded. He says multiple times in this book that he wanted to live the bachelor life forever. He never wanted to be married to anyone. Um, it's queer. It's clear that he has some sort of relationship with Pan, something, even if it is just like a queer platonic life partner type thing, or even if it's just a friendship. And it's hard to do a romance book with someone who is not romantic. But like,
That's what I think, a short story where like they, whatever their relationship is in their relationship that's been broken, gets
yeah,
fixed.
yeah,
Like give me love in whatever way that it is for them. Because like they both, Pan shows up very briefly again in this book, and it's just like, y'all are so sweet.
yeah,
um,
good people.
so yeah, and I will say that I am excited. Like I was not excited for this book. Like I always knew that it was always gonna be a little bit weird.
Yeah,
But so the next book, we see that pairing briefly interact at the end here. Um, and it like made me laugh, even though it's like two back and forths, right? And I was like, oh, I like this dynamic the way that it's being set up. And with everything that's happening now, we are really excited to read the next one. It's not like we've invested so much time in the series at this point. Also, I just want to know how it ends.
yeah.
And I will be here until Hira gets her book. But yeah, so this book is like really, really weird because we're like super excited to read the rest of the series, and like great plot things happened. If you just forget the romance in this romance book, everything
Ugh.
is great.
Series overall still 5 stars. This particular book, not 5 stars. Not good. Ugh.
No.
Yeah. So takeaways. You have to read this one, unfortunately, before the plot. But the plot's good, but the romance is not good. Blech. Listen, read it for the Dionysus parts, because every single time he is on page, it's worth it.
So very briefly, I feel like this video has already gotten kind of long, but we had a lot of things, and you weren't even here for the discussion we had before this. Like we have talked like triple the time about this book, trying to figure out what we were going to say. But because of the way our biweekly schedule is supposed to work for Betwixt content, we will actually have 3 Betwixt videos in August. So obviously we have this review, which is an ARC review. So thank you to the publisher and Edelweiss for our advanced review copies. Um, and then in 2 weeks, we are so excited. We have a mega like celebration video for you guys. It's called 30 Books for 30 Years because we both turned 30 this year. And we talk about 15 books each that have really impacted us at these like 3 decades of our lives. And it's great because you get book recommendations, and we like tell stories about our like lives as well. So I really loved filming it. Because the amazing thing is that it was filmed with both of us on this couch.
Yep.
So it's in person. It was really weird, honestly. I was like, where do I look? And then at the end of the month, we have a themed reading roundtable, which will be social justice nonfiction books. So we have a couple of people slated for that, and we will see you for all of those things later on this month. So thank you if you made it all the way to the end, and we will be right here to discuss the next book in this series whenever it comes out, and whatever we
Probably
read.
winter. It's usually like January,
Yeah, it's like
February, the
6
next one.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. See you guys then. Bye.
Right.